Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive, exploring the skills you'll need to not just survive, but really thrive in the future of work.
Yeah, things are evolving at an incredible pace, right?
Definitely. It feels like we're on the edge of some pretty massive shifts in the workplace, and today we're all about equipping you with the tools to lead through those shifts. We're talking about AI, automation, more global and diverse teams.
Right. And it's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is. But to help us unpack it all, we've got a ton of great insights from executive coaches leading business schools and leadership development experts.
So we can really paint a picture of what leadership looks like in this rapidly changing world. And it's interesting, even with all the talk about robots and AI taking over human skills are more important than ever.
That's a good point. So how does that work? I mean, it's easy to get caught up in all the hype around AI and automation, but where do human skills fit into all of that?
It's really about finding that balance. Leaders need to figure out how to use technology to increase efficiency, but also create a work environment that feels, well, human.
I like that this idea of a balancing act between humans and technology. So how do we actually do that?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that technology is ultimately a tool. It's powerful, but it still needs direction.
Right, it needs a human touch.
Exactly. Leaders need to be the ones setting the vision and making sure that technology serves human needs and not the other way around.
Okay, so can you give me an example of what that might look like in practice?
Sure, think about all the ways companies are using AI now to automate those routine, repetitive tasks.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot.
By doing that, it frees up their employees to focus on more creative, strategic work.
More of the human-centered stuff.
Precisely. And that's where this idea of compassionate coaching comes in.
I've heard that term a lot lately. Can you explain what it means exactly?
It's essentially about guiding your team through these changes, these disruptions, in a way that makes them feel supported.
So it's more than just telling them what to do. It's about understanding where they're coming from.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that change can be unsettling and then providing the encouragement and resources that your team needs to adapt and grow.
It sounds like the best leaders are really focusing on developing their team's skills and potential.
Absolutely, even if that means supporting them to move beyond their current role within the organization.
Okay, so that makes sense on the human side of things. But what about the tech skills leaders need? It seems like if you're not comfortable with technology, you'll be left behind.
You're right. Being digitally literate is essential. Leaders need to understand how technology is impacting their field and be willing to adapt and learn as things change.
So you need to be tech savvy.
You do, but this doesn't mean you have to become a programmer or anything. It's more about being comfortable with technology, being able to use it strategically.
Could you give me an example?
Sure. A leader might not need to know how to code an AI algorithm, but they should probably understand how AI can be used to make better decisions.
Or automate some of the tasks within their team.
Right. And it's not just about understanding it. It's about embracing those changes technology brings, even when they feel uncomfortable.
Adapting to change.
Exactly. The ability to be agile, to be able to pivot and embrace change, that's essential for any leader, especially in this kind of fast-paced environment.
So we need to become comfortable with being uncomfortable.
In a way, yes, because the leaders who will really thrive are the ones who can learn quickly, adapt to new situations, and embrace those new ways of working.
Easier said than done, though, right? I mean, change can be scary, and it's natural to want to resist it.
It is. But one way to get better at this is to cultivate what I like to call a tech-savvy teen mindset. Think about how teens are usually the first to embrace new trends and technologies.
They seem to jump right in.
They do. They're naturally curious and much less resistant to change. So I think leaders can actually benefit a lot from tapping into that willingness to explore and experiment.
So maybe we all need to channel our inner teenager.
Maybe we do. It's funny because we're not really throwing out the whole traditional leadership playbook, are we?
Not really. But we are adding some new chapters. Right?
Yeah, it's like adding a few chapters, maybe even rewriting some sections altogether. And I think this whole idea of a skill shift really captures what's happening.
Okay, so let's talk specifics. What are some of the foundational skills that are still going to be essential for leaders, even as things change around us?
Well, communication, for one, being able to really articulate your vision, to inspire your team, give effective feedback.
Right, the basics.
Exactly. Those are timeless. No matter how much technology advances, the ability to really connect with people is always going to be essential for leaders.
Makes sense. What about strategic thinking? It seems like that's even more important now with the pace of change, being able to anticipate what's coming next.
Definitely. The ability to analyze all that information, to anticipate challenges, and then come up with a plan to address them, those skills are going to be crucial.
I think in some ways those skills become even more critical as the pace of change accelerates.
I agree. Because leaders need to be thinking ahead, seeing the bigger picture, and then making decisions that set their teams up for success, not just today, but in the long term.
So those are some of the classics, right? What about some of the new skills that are emerging as must-haves for future leaders? I'm seeing some pretty interesting things pop up in our research.
One that really stands out is skill agility. It's all about being able to learn new skills quickly and effectively.
So it's like being a master of upskilling and reskilling yourself, constantly evolving to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's really about being agile and adaptable in terms of your skill set.
Skill agility, it sounds a little intimidating, but I get why it would be important, especially in a world where the job market is constantly shifting.
Think about it. There are going to be jobs that don't even exist today that will be commonplace in 5-10 years.
Wow, that's a good point.
So the leaders who thrive in that kind of environment are going to be the ones who are able to adapt and learn those new skills.
It's not just about what you're good at now, but what you can learn to do next.
Exactly. And that actually ties in pretty closely with another critical skill, continuous learning.
So like we were saying before, it's about having that tech-savvy teen mindset, always being open to new information, new ways of doing things.
Yes. Leaders need to be lifelong learners, always seeking out new information, new perspectives.
It's not enough to get a degree and just coast on that knowledge for your entire career anymore, is it?
Not at all. The most successful leaders are going to be those who are always learning, whether it's through formal education, online courses,
Mentorship, just reading about your field.
all of that. It's about actively engaging in your own professional development.
So we've talked about continuous learning, skill agility, and how those relate to adaptability. Let's go back to emotional intelligence, or EQ, for a second. I know it's kind of a buzzword these days, but why is it especially important for leaders in the future?
Well, as artificial intelligence and automation get more sophisticated, they're likely to be able to take over more of the tasks that require raw intelligence.
Number crunching and data analysis and things like that.
Right. But the thing that really sets humans apart is our ability to connect, to empathize, to really understand and manage our emotions.
That's where EQ comes in. So it's not just about being nice or being likable. It's about having the self-awareness to know what you're good at and not so good at.
Yeah, and also that social awareness, being able to understand how your actions impact other people.
Being in tune with the people around you.
Exactly. And it goes even deeper than that. There's some research that suggests that EQ might actually become even more important than IQ in the future.
Really? I mean, that's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? Why would that be?
Well, think about it this way. As AI takes over more tasks that can be automated, the skills that will be most valuable are the ones that AI just can't replicate. Things like building relationships, motivating people, resolving conflicts.
Handling those tricky social situations.
Yes, these are all things that require a high level of EQ, empathy, self-awareness, and strong communication skills.
It's almost like technology is forcing us to really focus on those things that make us uniquely human.
You're right. And those are the very qualities that are going to be essential for effective leadership no matter what the future throws at us. And that brings us to another interesting leadership style that's getting a lot of attention these days, servant leadership.
Okay, servant leadership.
Yeah.
I've heard the term, but I have to admit it's always sounded a little strange to me.
Yeah, it's a bit counterintuitive, isn't it?
I mean, shouldn't leaders be leading?
Exactly. And that's where the servant part comes in. It's about leading by serving others, putting the needs of your team first, and helping them develop their skills and reach their full potential.
So it's more about empowering your team than directing them.
Yes, and what's really interesting is that the research has actually shown that organizations with servant leaders tend to have higher levels of employee engagement, productivity, and innovation.
So it's not just a nice idea, it actually gets results.
It does, and I think it makes perfect sense when you consider the kind of workplace culture we've been talking about. One where people feel valued, supported, and empowered to do their best work.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Skill agility, continuous learning, EQ, servant leadership. It's a lot. Anything else we should be adding to this list of future-ready skills?
Yes, one more that's really crucial in our globalized world. Global cultural competence.
Ah, you're right. That's a good one. I mean, it's not a brand new concept, but it seems like it would be even more important in a world where teams are increasingly diverse and spread out all over the place.
Exactly. Leaders need to be able to work effectively with people from different cultures, backgrounds, and perspectives.
So being sensitive to cultural differences, understanding how people communicate in different ways, and building trust and rapport across all of those differences.
Right, and it's not just about avoiding faux pas or anything like that. It's about really leveraging those differences to build more innovative and collaborative teams.
It ties in really well with all this talk about diversity and inclusion.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because diversity and inclusion isn't just about doing the right thing. It's about recognizing that diverse teams just perform better. They bring a wider range of perspectives, ideas, and experiences, and that leads to better problem solving and decision making.
I like how all these skills are really interconnected. You can't really be a compassionate coach without EQ, and you can't embrace skill agility without being a continuous learner.
They all work together to create a more effective and human-centered leadership style. And that's what I find so exciting about this whole shift. It's not about becoming some kind of robotic overlords. It's about embracing the things that make us human, our ability to connect, to empathize, and inspire.
There's so much great information.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it can feel a little overwhelming, right? I mean, it's a lot to think about developing all of these skills. What advice would you give to our listeners who are maybe feeling a bit intimidated by this whole future of leadership thing?
Yeah, it is a lot to process, isn't it? But the good news is you don't have to become an expert in everything overnight.
Right. It's about taking small steps, making progress over time.
Exactly. It's a journey. It's all about continuous growth and development. And I really think it all starts with self-awareness.
Okay, the classic know thyself advice. But how do we actually put that into practice? How do we become more self-aware as leaders?
One of the most effective ways is to actually seek out feedback from others. Ask your colleagues, your team, even your friends and family for honest feedback about your strengths and weaknesses.
So don't be afraid of those 360-degree reviews.
Yeah, those can be really valuable, and personality assessments can be helpful too.
Oh yeah, there are so many of those out there these days.
There are. And while you shouldn't take them as gospel, they can give you some interesting insights into your communication style, your decision-making tendencies, that sort of thing.
And of course, there's always good old-fashioned introspection. Just taking some time to reflect on your experiences, on your successes and failures, what you've learned along the way.
That's so important, whether it's journaling or meditation or just taking some quiet time to think.
Getting to know yourself better.
Exactly. Understanding what motivates you, what your strengths are, maybe where your blind spots are.
So self-awareness is the foundation. What's next?
Once you have a solid understanding of yourself, then you can start working on developing specific skills. And one of the best ways to do that is through continuous learning.
We touched on that earlier, but let's dive a little deeper. What does continuous learning look like day to day? How can we make it a regular part of our lives?
Well, it can take a lot of different forms. Maybe it's enrolling in a leadership program, taking some online courses, going to conferences, even just reading books and articles in your field.
It's really about making the time for it, right? Even when you're busy.
You got it. And it's about having that growth mindset, that belief that you can always learn and grow.
I think executive coaching has become a pretty popular way to develop leadership skills. What are your thoughts on that?
I think coaching can be really beneficial, especially if you find the right coach, because it gives you that one-on-one support and guidance from someone who can help you figure out what you want to achieve, create a plan to get there, and then hold you accountable.
So it's like having a personal trainer for your leadership skills.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And then there's mentorship, which is incredibly valuable too.
Finding someone you really admire who can provide guidance and support.
And a different perspective. A good mentor can really help you navigate those challenges, make tough decisions, and it can help you expand your network too.
And it's important to remember that mentorship is a two-way street.
Absolutely. You can learn just as much from being a mentor as you can from having one.
So we've talked about self-awareness, continuous learning, coaching, mentorship. Any other strategies we should be thinking about when it comes to developing those future-ready skills?
One more that I think is really important but often overlooked: experimentation.
Experimentation. What do you mean by that?
It's about being willing to try new things, stepping outside your comfort zone, and even failing sometimes.
Wait, did you say fail? I thought leaders weren't supposed to fail.
That's the old way of thinking about leadership. Future leaders need to be comfortable with failure, seeing it as an opportunity to learn.
So taking risks and being willing to learn from mistakes.
Exactly. And creating a culture where it's safe for your team to experiment, share ideas, and yes, make mistakes along the way.
This has been such an interesting conversation. I feel like I have a much better grasp on what it takes to lead in today's world.
And remember, it's a journey. You don't have to do it all at once. Just pick one or two things that really resonate with you and focus on making small, consistent progress.
Great advice. So to wrap up our deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you hope everyone listening will remember?
The future of work is full of unknowns, but one thing is for sure. The leaders who embrace change, cultivate their human skills, and never stop learning, they're the ones who are going to shape the future.
So be bold, be curious, and never stop learning. Thanks for joining us.